Hello, hello. Hello, my lovely seekers and finders. Welcome to The Way of Truth number 25. My name is Artem Boydze. I'm a spiritual teacher. This is my website, so feel free to check it out. So, in this broadcast, we speak about all matters of spirituality and enlightenment. I give guidance, answer questions from my students. I highly encourage you to participate live in this broadcast. Let me post a link to do that. So it's also in the description of this video. It is being broadcasted on both YouTube and Facebook. So this has been posted to both of the platforms right now. If you wish to participate live, that's always better. Just follow this link. All you need is a browser, and I'll bring you on stage and we'll have a conversation. If you don't wish to participate live, you can submit questions to both YouTube and Facebook, and I will bring them on screen and address them. So today I am going to address some of the questions from my Discord platform. So to those of you that do not know, we have a wonderful community of spiritual practitioners on Discord, practicing meditation and other methods of both inquiry and integration, shadow work. So this is a wonderful community. You can find support there when the going gets tough, as it invariably does on the spiritual path. This is the link to the community. Please feel free to join it. So I will address some of the questions from my students now. Okay. So a student is asking, who wishes to remain anonymous, why do other teachers focus strongly on thought as well as action and intention, being one that creates reality? Should one work on directing these thoughts, probably, a certain way? And is there a time where it doesn't matter or it isn't possible to do this? If you could talk about thought versus action and intention. Okay, this is a wonderful question. The first part of your question, why do other teachers focus strongly on thought, being one that creates reality? Well, to be really honest with you, is because most teachers are still dreaming. Thought does not create reality, actually. Reality is fine without your thought. It doesn't need your thought to exist, trust me. Thought creates dreaming. And more precisely, actually, thought reflects dreaming. So the content of your thought reflects your self-view and the view of other people. And this view is constructed by the mind. It is perfectly possible, actually, to direct thought to specific experiences. And a lot of people do that. It is considered good practice in some circles. It's actually not. It might have some value and it might have some benefit because it can get you to the parts of you which are hidden and rejected. But sooner or later, these tricks also stop working. So to give you an example, like, for example, if you feel very bad about yourself, like you think that you're a pessimist, basically. Your view is very pessimistic. Everything is bad. Everyone is bad. Things are going to be bad for you all the time in the future. Then it's actually quite possible to develop the opposite view, the optimistic view, by starting noticing good things about yourself, starting noticing other things about yourself, practicing gratitude. It might be beneficial to some people to do that. What But what unites both of those experiences, what unites uh, feeling good and feeling bad coming from thought, coming from directing thought in a certain way, is that both of those experiences are created by the mind. And the interesting thing about it is that uh, as we go deeper into the spiritual journey, the hidden, rejected parts of the mind are being exposed to us. So even if on the level of consciousness you experience a lot of negativity, then in a sufficiently deep meditation, even if you don't do anything, but you just witness the thought, you just witness the thought and feel the emotions that it creates, in a sufficiently deep meditation, you will encounter a layer of positivity, joy that is hidden beyond it. And the people who are positive, who are inauthentically positive, kind of, some people will call it toxically positive, but basically who constructed this artificially positive, optimistic persona, in deep meditation, they actually struggle very much to encounter the negativity and darkness that exists in them. Because you see, those experiences, they're strictly equivalent. So just like the mind can create an extraordinary amount of misery, the mind can also create an extraordinary amount of bliss and joy. This is just a reflection, basically. That's the source of being blissful and joyful on the spiritual path. It's a reflection, the other side, the other coin of the suffering that is on the level of consciousness. So people who are very, let's say, negative tend to discover a positive and joyful side of them. And people who are very positive actually tend to discover the bitter and angry parts of them. So the reality is neither. The reality is neither optimistic nor pessimistic. It's just what it is. So both of those aspects of the mind are to be explored in meditation. So that's why the kind of highest form of meditation is an all-allowing meditation, the do-nothing meditation, where you just witness the mind generating all these thoughts and experience the energetic and emotional response coming from them. Now, that being said, if you are overly negative, there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to correct the thought, because the thought is always, most of the thought, the vast majority of thought in the mind is extremely distortive. So it either distorts reality as something very bad, or it distorts reality as something very good, and then there's a lot of excitement and euphoria and hopefulness, from which there's invariably a crash. And the extreme form of this is what's it called? I don't quite know if it's I don't quite remember if it's BPD, or if it's there was another term for this, like, for it just kind of slipped my mind. I used to remember it when people go through very deep depression, and then they go through a periods of mania and excitement and great hope about the future. So that's kind of the extreme version of it. But every mind has a tendency for it. And so this tendency, these waves of both negativity and positivity, they kind of, in enlightenment, they slowly take some time. It's a process. They slowly die down. And the key is to allow yourself to experience everything. So there is something to be said about a situation where you were, let's say, like completely stuck in negative patterns of thinking. When you look at the thought on the objective level, and with an intention to see for yourself if it's true or not. So there's that's what the cognitive behavioral therapy is based on. And because the mind has tendency to see everything, black and white, catastrophizing, exaggerating. In the reality, we don't really know much. You see, like in reality, almost every statement about the future, about how it will be for you, how life will be for you, is not true. You can't know this. You don't know this. The only thing that you know is what's happening right now. And so, so there is something to be said about challenging thought, uh, or even there is something to be said about creating, like intentionally thinking specific things, like let's say positive things that make you feel a certain way. Because it allows you to explore your ability, basically, just what happens naturally in meditation or in psychedelic trips. It allows you to explore the whole range, your great ability to be miserable and extremely ecstatic, to be dreadful and very hopeful for the future. Both are ability of the mind, and both are energetic emotional experiences to be accepted and explored. So there is something to be said about that. Now, that being said, you I'm just looking at your question. You sort of are precisely right when you say, where is it? Yeah, is there a time where it doesn't matter or it isn't possible to do this? Yes. So there comes a times when it's no longer possible to do this, when you will notice that doing this kind of stops working anymore, if only momentarily. You see, because the journey is towards deeper accepting of how you're feeling right now and the deeper accepting of reality rather than creating reality. So this ability to create reality with thought and to create artificial experiences with thought is what is being destroyed actually in the process of spiritual transformation, to become closer and closer situated in reality that is happening right now. Also, when I said in the beginning that thought tends to reflect reality rather than create it, I understand that it's somewhat contradictory to what I was saying before. But my point is that kind of the amount of suffering that we carry, the amount of pain that we still have in our bodies, in our hearts, in our emotional life, tends to create a distorted version of reality. And if you have a lot of pain, then this version will be very negative. Actually, if this version is very positive, then it's also a reflection of this pain, because it's a reflection of a hope, of a yearning, of an excitement to reduce it, to not face it, basically. So kind of complete optimists are just as deluded as complete pessimists, you see, because reality is neither optimistic nor pessimistic. It's just what it is. So in any way, whether with a plus or a minus, the world of thought reflects the rejected inner suffering. And I'm talking about self-referential thought. I'm talking about comparisons to other people. I'm not necessarily talking about analytical thought. It's like if you're just solving some, I don't know, math problem or something like that, it doesn't reflect the inner landscape of your suffering. But when you think about yourself, the future, the past, other people, how you compare to them, what it's going to be for you in the future, or what it was in the past, these are the processes that are reflective of still rejected, unfelt, unintegrated inner suffering. And then you also asked me to touch on intention versus action. So action creating reality is a little bit more accurate statement. And the reason is, and we actually just had a conversation on Discord to this regard, is that any action that is self-rejecting, any action that is against yourself, and oftentimes it includes actions that are against other people, because we treat other people the same that we treat ourselves. Not always, but oftentimes. Any action that is of this nature can create additional suffering, because you will later need to realize that you acted against yourself, that you acted against your heart, and it will create sadness, and it will create anger. And so we can but it is somewhat, a cyclical process. It's a kind of a conglomeration of diminishing waves, getting lost and getting found again. You see, you cannot stop acting against yourself. You cannot stop acting in ways that are less self-loving instantly. And so even in the realized state, even in Sahaja Samadhi, you continue to do that. You just realize it faster. So we can even describe enlightenment. We can even talk about the degree of realization as the kind of time period between doing something stupid, acting egoically, acting against your best interest or against interest of other people, out of pain or out of fear, and realizing it and experiencing the emotional response that comes from this realization, which can be anger, which can be guilt, which can be sadness, grieving, like lots of stuff. So this time period slowly diminishes and diminishes and diminishes. And in enlightenment, we can say that this time period is zero. So you never act against yourself. You never act out of pain. And so in practice, in reality, it kind of the first moment of realization is usually a tremendously dramatic event. So there are a lot of things coming out to the surface, because it was sort of the reevaluation of our past and of our past actions starts, and it usually starts very dramatically and intensely, but it continues. So it's sort of a waves that go down and down and down and down. So the reason that I mention it is that it is impractical and actually very harsh to think of your to take this framework that all my actions now must be stemming from the heart. All my actions, like I continue to do wrong actions, I continue hurting myself and stuff like that. You actually continue hurting yourself with this line of thinking. It is impossible to stop it instantly. So you will continue making mistakes. You will continue learning from those mistakes. You will continue realizing deeper and deeper on a subtler and subtler level all the actions that you take against yourself or against other people. And that's okay. You cannot relearn instantly. So you will keep doing the same mistakes over lesser and lesser, let's say, of lesser and lesser gravity, but you will continue doing the same mistakes until you actually learn these lessons for good. So that's normal. That's completely normal. It cannot be avoided. You cannot just jump into a completely new way of living instantaneously, even if it seems this way. This is not true. So that's so making mistakes is okay, but yes, strictly speaking, very strictly speaking, actions are connected to suppressed suffering. Actions are connected to our karma in this way, and the intent is also connected with action in a way that an action which is a self-rejecting, a wrong action, so to speak, is an action that comes from intent that is coming out of pain, and it's usually either it is an intent to hurt, or it is an intent to avoid your own pain and discomfort. So basically, out of fear. So both of those gradually and slowly relax in over the course of the spiritual journey as your resistance to inner pain and as your resistance to fear diminishes, and your actions become naturally more reflecting of love towards yourself and towards other people. Thoughts are actually something quite different. When you have good thoughts or bad thoughts, good willing thoughts or very aggressive thoughts, even if if you have a thought of I wish you were dead, even if you're fantasizing about killing someone, or even if you're fantasizing about killing yourself, don't try to stop it. Never do it, of course. Never do it, but leave the thoughts alone, because thought is not action. Thought in itself is nothing but a reflection of your inner landscape, if your inner psyche, if your inner emotional landscape. They need exploration. They need to be sort of left alone, and the attention needs to move into how this thought make you feel. So the mind will keep creating thoughts again and again, both positive and negative, until you have exhausted your yearning to feel a certain way, basically. And that happens in meditation, that happens in psychedelics, that also happens through life. The less of avoidance to feel a certain way and clinging also to feel a certain way, which are two sides of the same coin, you have, the more your actions reflect the natural state effortlessly. And the more loving they become, the more understanding you become of yourself and others, and the more your life flowers and becomes more beautiful, peaceful, joyful. So that's what I have to say about this question. Thank you for this question. Okay, now let me take a look at the backlog of my questions from my main channel, questions for Artem, on my Discord community. So Brandon is asking on November 20th, 2023, if good things can come from the ego, say the compassion of a bodhisattva, then why dissolve it? And if both good and bad come from the ego, then doesn't judgment of good and bad become worthless from the standpoint of truth? Okay, good questions. The good things actually don't come from the ego. The compassion of bodhisattva doesn't come from the ego. Yes, bodhisattvas still have the ego. They still deluded but the compassion of a true bodhisattva is the same compassion that Buddhas have, the same compassion that completely enlightened people have. They are just in touch with it. They are more in touch with it than other people. So this compassion comes from the heart. It doesn't come from the ego. It's very actually easy to see the difference. If someone like proclaims themselves a bodhisattva and starts doing things out of compassion without feeling pain, then they are faking it. They're not true bodhisattvas yet. True authentic compassion makes you cry. The fake compassion makes you feel good about yourself. Oh, like I did this for someone. Oh, I'm such a great person. I'm such a bodhisattva. Everyone look at me. The authentic compassion is actually quite painful. It's quite difficult. It's usually tears. It's tears for everyone, and it comes with authentic desire for everyone's well-being. So this doesn't come from the ego. This is your natural state. Now, with regards to your other question about good and bad is coming from the ego, It's not that there's no good and bad. Uh, what's good and bad is actually quite obvious. You see, it's like if I kill your child, of course it's bad. If I hurt you without any reason, of course it's bad. If I exploit someone, enslave someone, of course it's bad. The the good and bad, the way that it is instilled by our society, is almost entirely false. Because what we are taught, that what matters more is how something looks versus how it actually is. We're taught that the most important thing is approval of other people. You can kill thousands of people at war, but as long as you have approval of others, you are a hero. That's the good and bad in our society. So it's almost entirely constructed, it's almost entirely artificial, and it's almost entirely based on our mutual abuse, and as such, our yearning for approval and climbing the social ladder. So, in the absolute terms, there's absolutely nothing good about it. It almost always leads to bad outcomes. And this is the good and bad that is destroyed. So when people say beyond good and bad, they aren't actually talking beyond all good and bad. It's not like, that's why they have a lot of words in spirituality which are kind of seem synonymous, but they create these words to try to differentiate the two. For example, judgment and discernment, you see. So judgment is coming from good and bad. Discernment is really seeing what's good and bad, you see. Uh, but uh, strictly speaking, I mean, you know what's bad. Everyone knows what's bad. Every child knows what's bad. Every animal knows what's bad. Like, no animal would lose its ability to understand, discern, if they're treated well or if they're treated like shit. So when people say, I am beyond good and bad, the mind beyond good and bad, they are actually talking about the constructed, the artificial, the socially instilled notions of good and bad that are coming from conditioning. So you're good if we approve of you, and we can approve of a lot of evil things. So, so so it's not like everything that is good and bad is coming from the ego, and enlightenment is like a completely amoral state. It is completely amoral in some perspective, because you're not suffering from observing someone's immorality. It is a very deep peace, but it doesn't mean that you cannot see it, and it doesn't mean that nothing matters to you at all. Of course, many things matter. I would like myself to be comfortable. I would like myself to be well fed. I would like myself to be healthy, and I wish the same to my every fellow human. So it's not that the notions of good and bad go away completely. The concepts of them do, actually, because the conceptual framework of good and bad is mostly the framework of this artificial, socially constructed good and bad. Why? Because you don't actually need to think about something that is obviously bad. You see, it's like if someone tries to kill you, it's not like you launch into an analytical process. Well, is it good for me or is it bad for me? Let's think about it. Let's think about it from the egoic perspective. Let's think about it from the universal perspective. You see, you understand instantly what's going on, and your body reacts to it instantly. So you don't actually have to, the true authentic kind of good and bad, you don't have to analyze at all. So if you have to analyze something, then you analyzing the conditioning, basically, that you analyzing the falsehoods that have been instilled. Truth needs no analysis at all. So only falsehoods need analysis. So it's also, it would not be correct to say neither that all good and bad is coming from the ego, neither that all actions are coming from the ego. Like, for example, even being very good at what you do, loving what you do, being a professional, loving your craft, is not coming from the ego. Uh, it's coming from the heart. It's coming from the joy of existence. It's coming from curiosity. It's coming from creativity. Every profession that you get good at is creative. And it's creative on a much deeper level than most people realize. Most people, and my prior self included, speak about creativity as, arts or poetry or, like, at most engineering, you see. But everything is extremely creative. Cooking is extremely creative. Gardening is extremely creative. Everything that you do with curiosity and heart, you get better and better at it, and you see different aspects of it that you haven't seen before. It's just a reflection of how infinitely complex reality is, and we all know examples of extraordinary, impressive people that do seemingly mundane tasks with such efficiency and grace that it and skill that it becomes art. That's extraordinary creative. So so creativity doesn't come from the ego. And there could be people who are and there are people, many people, who even have very rotten character and suffer tremendously on the interpersonal level, but are tremendously good at what they do. And by what they do, by directing their creative energy into something good, they bring good to the world. It's not like all doings are the work of ego. That's not true. Mostly the work of ego is your personal landscape of relationship with other people, where you seek emotional satisfaction from them, when you seek validation and approval, and the suffering it is the work of ego. But your general desire to ensure your survival and all of the creative pursuits on top of it are not the work of ego. Cast is asking, on November 22nd, do you take anything serious, and what does it mean to be serious? Well, yes, of course I take something serious. I mean, I do take myself serious. and I don't take whatever, like the remaining suffering of the ego, which is very little, if any, serious. So I don't take the suffering, my suffering, seriously. However much of it is left, I can't feel much of it. So on day-to-day basis, I don't perceive myself to suffer at all. So I don't take my past suffering seriously, because I know that it was all mind created and not real in some sense. But I do take the things that people do to each other very seriously. I take violence very seriously. I look at the abuse that is predominant in our society, the subjugation, very seriously. I understand the consequence of self-deceit, and I take it very seriously. And I know where self-deceit is coming from. It's coming from abuse. So I take abuse quite seriously. I take childhood abuse quite seriously. I take neglect quite seriously. It doesn't mean that I suffer when I see it, because I made a very deep peace with it. I understand what society we live in. I understand what is happening here. I understand that it's been happening for many centuries. It will probably continue to happen for many centuries, even until after I die. And I understand that I will only be able to make a very small bent in it. There were thousands of enlightened people throughout the history, and no one changed the world. it's a slow process, and our society goes through a slow transformation, just like an individual goes through a small transformation. But on the individual level, it takes a decade or two. On a social level, it will probably take many centuries. So I understand that, and I want to contribute to that. But it doesn't mean that I do not take it, that I suffer from this understanding. I do take it quite seriously, though. Yes, the things that people do to each other are extraordinarily ugly. I take work quite seriously. So, so it's not like I am kind of laughing at it all. I actually have been in this state where everything seems completely unserious and beyond good and bad and blah 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 and ha ha ha, and you just laugh about everything. From my current perspective, that's delusion. So I'm not laughing at it like an idiot, but I'm not crying about it either. I just look at it with very kind of cold, serene understanding. So yes, some things I take quite seriously. Yes, absolutely. But never take your mind seriously. Your mind is not a thing to take seriously. Take your body seriously. So the emotions, the energies, everything that you feel in your body become closer to it. The mind is full of lies. Okay, on November 24th, Tal Mamal Named Naud is asking, is there an indicator of how long it typically takes to get from self-realization to enlightenment? Usually it takes very long. So even with continued practice. So I think that it took Ramana like 6 years from realizing his being to realizing his non-being, and that's not enlightenment yet. So usually it takes people about 10 years or more to kind of completely relax and deeply understand both aspects of the jewel, both the beauty of life and the emptiness of death, and kind of clear their mind sufficiently of self-deceit. Most people never do. There's quite a significant amount of self-deceit in most spiritual teachers. It's tempting to stop at any phase. The only reason I didn't, I attribute it to my continued usage of psychedelics along with meditation, because meditation stops being very effective at a certain stage. That's why Osho went to 3 years of silence, which is basically 3 years of meditation. So, but after the moment of realization, after you realize that what you thought you were, your ego, your character, the persona in your mind, does not actually exist, after the moment of realization, it usually takes at least like 6 or 10 years to arrive into a state when suffering no longer arises intensely, let's say. So when it's kind of a smooth sailing, right? It doesn't mean life doesn't have any struggle. By suffering, I mean unnecessary suffering. So suffering that is coming from the past. That we can talk about it as suffering that arises while you're not doing anything, in a long meditation, for example. So it usually takes quite some time, and it also heavily depends on how deeply conditioned you were. So how much abuse you have went through, and how much your reaction to mistreatment and abuse you have suppressed. So on the other side of this coin, if you were the abusive one, then how much damage you have done to other people out of anger and hatred, and also, again, how much of your compassion and tears and guilt you have suppressed. So both are kind of just different side of the same thing, and most people actually have both. But some are predominantly victims, some are predominantly perpetrators. So it depends on how much of suffering still exists in you. And yes, it would take longer for someone who's been significantly abused and significantly conditioned, like up to the extent that they find it extraordinarily difficult to say no to another person, or it would take long to someone who has done a lot of damage out of hatred and anger. It would take longer for the mind to settle down into silence. But yes, it takes some time. So please be patient with yourself. Don't try to yearn for anything. Always focus on the present moment. Always focus on what's going on right now. Always continue giving direct attention, direct awareness to anything uncomfortable that is coming up in you. And you will invariably go deeper and deeper into the into relaxation, and find new layers of pain, but also new layers of freedom, new layers of lightness, new layers of love. And some people would tell you that this process is never ending. I actually don't have a problem with this view, but if we are to take this view, then the very same people would agree that it becomes less and less intense. So even if we are to take this view, then in the interest of objectivity, we would have to look at it as some sort of a function approaching a limit, like an asymptote. So in the beginning, it's very dramatic, and the deeper you go, it still kind of approaches, but maybe it never hits it. I don't know. Maybe that's how those people view it. But still, with every passing time, there's less and less of suffering to uncover. There's more and more peace. It's less intense. It becomes closer and closer and closer with time. So in this view, the complete enlightenment is only possible when you die, which is okay. I mean, it's not an invalid view, but still, even in this view, we can sort of identify the moment in time when it stops being very difficult, right? And the new insights, even though they come, they're not as dramatic, they're not as profound, they're not as covered by the thick layer of emotional resistance. And so then we can interpret your question of, well, how long does it take from self-realization to that? So then my answer was to that question. So yeah, it usually takes some time, like 6, 10, 12 years, quite significant usually. Okay, It's Me is asking on November 24th, 2023, what is religion or philosophy? That's a good question. I actually answered it in one of my core answers. Philosophy is an attempt to understand reality logically. That's why it doesn't work. That's why actually there is no system of moral philosophy that would not fail in some circumstance. So there are a few systems of moral philosophy, and if you take any one of them, there's an example where it fails spectacularly, where like just, according to its logic, you should have done something that every person with a common sense would say, this is stupid. So because there is no consistent way to live life, you cannot like logically encapsulate existence. So every philosophy, if it's taken deep enough, if a philosopher struggles with it for long enough and is brave enough to take it deep enough, that they start staring into the void, and they either become religious, or they start drinking heavily or something, or they turn away from philosophy. But basically philosophers are didn't take their philosophy deep enough. So it actually requires a sort of on one hand, it requires a lot of intellect to be able to grasp with these questions. On the other hand, it requires a lot of stupidity to see that those questions aren't actually answerable, and they're much more about the person who struggles with them than they are about the world. Religion is something different. So religion is a very interesting thing. I mean, we can talk about religion in a very harsh terms, and I did in the past, and I still can do that. Like that, religion blinds you to truth. Religion is blind belief. It's very misleading. Yes, 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 absolutely. But if we look at the true nature of religion, which almost no one practices, almost no one. But there are true Christians, there are true Hindu, there are true Buddhists. They're just rare, but there are. So if we look at the true nature of religion, then religion is a combination of two things. First, it gives you a worldview. And so the worldview of Christianity is quite different from Buddhism. It's quite different from Hinduism. I mean, Buddhism and Hinduism is a little bit more like, but they give you that some sort of worldview. So this worldview is actually mind view. They basically try to explain what's going on in your mind. So every religion, from this perspective, if it's taken far enough, destroys itself. So it destroys this worldview. So if this worldview is appealing to you, if it sort of resonates with you, then you will find this religion appealing, because it would appear to have some sort of a explanatory power about your suffering, about why your life is difficult for you. And it's appealing to the ego because the ego wants to explain. It wants some explanation about why it is suffering, and possibly some way out. So that's the first thing that a religion does. That's actually why religions aren't very popular right now, because the most popular worldview right now is actually atheistic worldview. Even though, I mean, most people are religious and blah blah blah, but we're not talking about what they do in their private lives. We're talking about culture. So, like in our culture, you turn on TV and it doesn't start with, God blessed us with rain today and things like that, which would have if we lived in a very religious society. So we actually live in a very scientific society, and there's a good reason for that, because as far as the external world is concerned, science works much better than religion. So science has acquired a sort of a respect and reputation which replaced religions in a lot of ways. And so that's also the reason why I don't, in my conversations with people, I don't use a lot of religious words and nomenclature. Not only because I'm not extensively familiar with them, but also because that's not the language that most people understand. Even the people that practice religions don't understand this language really. They just want to sort of some blind faith in the explanation of the suffering. The language that most people understand right now is the language of psychology, is the language of modern culture. And the language of modern culture isn't religious. So the people who really understand religious language is fundamentalists, and there are quite few. So yes, that's one function of religion, and this function is actually slowly has been losing its significance. But then there is another function of religion which is almost entirely overlooked, and is every religion is also a method of practice. And if the practice in every religion is taken deep enough, then this very practice will destroy the religious worldview that was used first to pull you into the religion. So obviously, almost no one takes the religious practice deep enough. And some religions are way more precise and accurate with regards to their practice. Like, for example, Buddhism, very precise with regards to meditation practice, very good description of what happens when it's taken to specific depths. In Pali Canon, I think Gautama describes the stages of unraveling of the mind very accurately, and still, I mean, even Buddhism destroys all the Buddhism ultimately if you take the practice deep enough. So Hinduism, they have a practice of yoga, but even Christianity, if you look at Christianity, a lot of things that they do there are can be considered legitimate spiritual practices. Like, for example, prayer, especially silent prayer, practices of gratitude. Confession, for example, is not very different from radical honesty. So the idea is that you speak honestly to someone non-judgmental, which of course priests are not, but they pretend to be, and to clear your conscience. And when you speak truth about what you've done or what your thoughts are, you also get closer to how it feels. You get closer towards yourself. You get more truthful. You get more honest. And I'm not very familiar with deeply impactful Christian practices, but there are some others too. So the most overlooked part of any religion is the actual path. So a religion is a sort of a codified spiritual path that has arisen from a living master who lived a long time ago and tried to both communicate truth to the people in their language and to give them some tools to explore themselves, to find themselves, to find the same things that they had found. That's what Jesus was. That's what Gautama was. And the worldview, of course, gets outdated. I mean, it's distorted in the first place. So every worldview is distorted in the first place. The world of psychology and the scientific understanding of reality and the psychological understanding of the mind, which is the language I mostly use, is also distorted in a lot of ways. It's also not reality, but it's the predominant language of the culture today. So that's why I use it. And so in the Jesus's time, or in Gautama's time, they also try to speak to people in the language that they understand, and they were also, arguably, Jesus was immersed in this language himself. So clinging to a specific description of the worldview in a religion as if it's the absolute truth is always a very serious mistake. But taking the methods and the methods of practice from religion, if you feel called to a religion, if you feel like this religion resonates with you, and if you consider yourself a Buddhist or consider yourself a Christian, taking the actual practice from this religion and practicing it yourself and applying it, that can in itself be a wonderful practice. So that's what religions are. So philosophy is something similar, but like the practice of philosophy is logical inquiry. And as such, it does not posit any worldview. It kind of tries to figure it out, and it tries to come up with some worldview, but not as truth, but as something, as a result of examination. So if it's taken deep enough, if every worldview that it comes up with is attacked and challenged logically, that it leads to the same direction ultimately as any religious practice does. So it leads to God if it's in the religion, is in the religious words. It leads to the void. It leads to love. It leads to death. It leads to the realization. Okay, hold on. My Discord closed for some reason. Okay, so I would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple of things. So first of all, please, if you like my videos, please like, subscribe, and share. This helps a lot. Your likes help a lot. Please subscribe to the channel. Uh, this would be wonderful. That would be very grateful. Also, if you like what I do, uh, please support our work. Let me my work. Well, it's not just my work. We have a community of people. My wife is also helping. We'll have a retreat in May. Hopefully, if you're interested in the retreat in May, send me an email or join our Discord community and send me a direct message. So on this page, you can schedule a one-time or a monthly donation via PayPal, or you can also support me on Patreon. Many people think that I'm a popular spiritual teacher who, doesn't have time for anything. This is actually not so. I'm a very obscure spiritual teacher. I don't have a lot of one-on-one meetings with people, and I am very, very far from making any sort of living wage from this. So your support with regards to monetary contribution as well as sharing my content is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're interested to working with me directly, you can schedule a one-on-one session with me. I will also post a link to it in a second. Yes, here it is. So it's a Calendly link. Please, there are free options, there are paid options, and I can both answer your questions. So we can do some methods of inquiry into the false beliefs of the mind, which is usually emotional for people. We can also do guided meditations. So there's a bunch of things that we can do. Okay, so let me continue. We still have about half an hour. So I have a question from the audience. Jeff is asking, hello, Artem. Hi, Jeff. Since the final realization is I'm the body, does that imply that no experience exists after the death of the body? Thank you. Yes. The only thing that I would want to mention is that the mind starts to die along with the body. So that's the nature of all near-death experiences, and that's also what happens on psychedelic trips. So some people describe their near-death experiences as universally pleasant and beautiful and kind of coming back to love and things like that. Something that people experience on DMT trip. That's also why there's speculation that DMT is released during death. But some people actually, when they have a near-death experience, they go through a purgatory-like experience, and I actually suspect that it's both. I suspect that it's impossible to die physically without your mind also dying, which means that all the suffering that exists in the mind will be seen. That is the purgatory kind of like experience where you see all of this, the vanity of other people, your vanity, anger, hatred, but it also implies the beautiful, infinite love that feels like home. But yes, there is no reincarnation. There never was. Okay, let me. Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to continue with my questions in my question for Artem channel. Seeing that no one's showed up for the actual conversation. Okay, Samsung 6280 on November 27th is asking, it seems to me that acceptance leads to inner peace. Yes. On the other hand, changing stuff seems to imply an inner friction, which fuels action. You can act without any friction, actually. I mean, unless you define being hungry as inner friction, you see. I mean, the only inner friction which is real inner friction is the functioning of the body, basically. I mean, and then you can say that it's not real, but that's an absurd position. That just means that you're talking from the perspective of death. From the perspective of death, nothing is real. But for as long as you're alive, the only inner friction that actually leads to immediate action is when something is happening to the body. But the inner friction that can arise in objective lack of any difficulty whatsoever is always coming from the past. It's always the mind's friction. And yes, it can lead to action in an attempt to relieve it. But you can never relieve it, actually. If you relieve it, it will find something else. I mean, that's why, if you really want success and you get success, then you're happy and content for a little while, but then you want more success, because the inner friction of I'm not worthy until I'm successful, I'm not worthy until many people say that I'm worthy, which is what it is fundamentally, has still not been resolved. So those inner friction that arise in complete objective lack of any difficulty for the body, they need to be explored. And then you can still do the same thing, but you do them without any friction. You do them because they give you pleasure. You do them because they give you joy. So you continue. Do we only have a choice between the vegetative state of acceptance and dissatisfied action, or is there a bridge of action and acceptance? Yes. So that's precisely how I answered it. Enlightenment is not a vegetative state. It's a state when there is no friction, there is no inner friction. So you do the things either because you love doing them, so you don't have to do them, but you love doing them, or because life is asking them of you, and you do it willingly without any friction. I mean, maybe you would rather have a different circumstance, but the circumstance is what it is, and that's what you want to do in this circumstance. You see, even improving your circumstance is something that you want to do. It doesn't have to be filled with friction. You see, the friction actually doesn't come from the circumstance as much as we think it does. It actually comes from the past. You see, more often the circumstance is a reflection of the past, just like the inner friction, then the inner friction is a reflection of the circumstance. At least in the situation where you're not violently abused, for example. But even then, if you're violently abused, then the most rational thing to do is to try to leave, is try to go somewhere else, or stand up for yourself. And people who are finding themselves in this situation, in these relationships, they usually can't, because their inner friction is what led them into this relationship in the first place, and they have a tremendous fear of living, and they also kind of don't trust themselves in the way that they could be subconsciously attracted to other abusive and bad situations. So there is very little actually inner friction that is not coming from the past. Very little. So yes, enlightenment is not a vegetative state of acceptance at all. No. There is a period, though, where it feels like it is. And just, in the interest of fairness, I have to mention that, yeah, I myself spent like a few years sitting on my sofa doing absolutely nothing, like completely immersed in bliss, like just looking outside the window, watching the birds, and it's just, acceptance, bliss, chat siddhananda. It's very nice, but it's not a state of complete enlightenment. And I think that the view of enlightenment as being a kind of a vegetative state of acceptance is coming from a lot of teachers teaching from that place. But it's not. It's not. It's not. Life is a beautiful journey in itself. So you can actually do anything at all, and you can pick any occupation and master any craft and do a variety of things that will bring you joy and pleasure, from surfing the ocean, the waves of the ocean, to becoming a nuclear physicist. It's a very, very deep, complete freedom. It's not a state of vegetative existence. The state of vegetative existence is actually the state of absorption in bliss. And the state of absorption in bliss is the other side. It's the consequence of many years of being absorbed in suffering and misery. Because, as I oftentimes say, all experiences are strictly symmetric in the mind. And so it needs to be transcended ultimately. Okay. SK is asking, oh, we have a guest, Sophie. Okay, let me bring her on stage. Hi, hi, it's good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too.
I've seen you in a long while.
Yeah.
You look wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. This isn't, I guess this is like, a mundane worldly kind of question, but
Should.
yeah, I feel like I don't know, I feel like I've been stuck in like a holding pattern for a little while, where it's clear that I'm just giving myself a lot of shit, and I don't know which part of it is coming from the conditioning and which part of it is like what is actually good for me and what I want to do. It's mostly been surrounding work recently. I got a new job, and I just feel like, honestly, I just feel like exhausted like most of the time. I feel like so exhausted, like when I stop and I sit with myself, a lot of the time it's just either like fall asleep or start crying. It's like one of the two, just because I feel fundamentally spent. But there's moments where I have like it I get over some hump in my head and I'm able to just do it. I mean, I kind of need healthcare. I've been having a lot of issues that lasted a
You want to tell
while.
a little bit? I
Yeah,
would have.
sorry. I had a lot of issues that have been lasting a while. Like I took a couple of years off of work, and my health got bad one of those years, and I was like, oh, maybe it's stress. I'll just rest, and it didn't get better from resting, which is why I wanted to go back to work. I don't know, but making myself do this job, it kind of feels like I'm torturing myself. Like I feel just like I like I don't I'm fighting myself with like everything in me to just
You don't want to do it.
at all. Yeah,
Well,
but
there's your answer.
I feel kind of stuck in terms of like I need money and I need um healthcare, and I guess I'm just scared. It feels hard to function in the world in a way that is
Yeah.
sustainable,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I've lost all ability to like emotionally regulate recently too. That's
That's
been
good.
like like if something's coming up, it just comes up, but like sometimes I gotta do shit and I don't have like 2 weeks to be crying.
Yeah, I know what you're going through. It can be really, really difficult to sustain a job and go through this emotional opening, the opening of the heart, and to also see how harsh you are towards yourself on some things. You
Yeah,
know?
it's like the only way I can like force myself to operate in that environment basically is being harsh towards myself, because if I was being gentle, I'd be sleeping and I wouldn't be
Yeah.
doing the stuff I need to be doing because I need rest.
Yes, yes. We need a lot of rest. I was extraordinarily blessed in this regard, because by the time that really started this deep journey, I got lucky. I was at Google. I had some savings, so I didn't work for some time. It's much harder to do when you need to work. I mean, you can really reevaluate and reconsider if it's possible for you to not work for some time. Um, but if it's not, uh, rest assured, it's gonna get easier. It's just going to be more intense. It's just going to be more intense. But there is something that you want out of work, and if that's money, if that's survival, and if it is the only way for you to live the physical lifestyle that you want, uh, then it is something that you want to do also.
I I could technically I do have some savings and I know I could technically quit and stop doing things for a while. I think I get like scared that I like maybe this is comparative. Like I feel like I see the constant churn of the professional world and this expectation that you stay on like a certain track and participate, and I'm scared of falling out of it and not being able to return to it and making my life harder for myself in the future, because I couldn't just like tough it out for a little bit now. I'm
I,
you know
I think you'll be able to return to it, but more importantly, uh, when you say harder, why do you think it will be harder?
um loss of network, just being plugged
Ah,
into a particular industry. You
I
get
see.
connections, you get opportunities, you build your skills, and it's easy to just stay and
I see.
yeah, fall
Yeah,
into
yeah.
yeah.
Well, imagine both circumstance and see how your mind reacts to that. Because you see, there is something that you're really called to doing in this dilemma, like in every dilemma. So in every dilemma, there is something that you really want to do uh, authentically. Be it stop working for a little while, especially if that's what you've always wanted to do but have always been afraid of, or maybe your work means much more to you and than the current emotional struggle that you have, and you would want to preserve it.
No, I definitely I know like I want to quit. I just it feels like a very like absolute like throw out the baby with the bathwater, give it all up like approach to things. Like I don't know, there's something in me that's rationally like, oh, just apply to these other jobs and see if you find something like a little chiller. And I do make myself go through that exercise, but I think what I like actually want to do is nothing, and I'm just like scared of going back to doing nothing, which I did for a while. That's part of why I'm scared of going back to not doing it, is because it was like kind of exactly what I wanted and needed, but I also like wasn't making any money and I wasn't advancing in any of these like just I don't know. Yeah, it feels weird to feel like my entire life is being put on pause to just like be alone and cry for a really long time.
But sometimes it's just what we need.
Yeah, it's
And you
just
know, like
scary.
even you also like don't have to commit to like doing nothing for a few years, right? You can take, I don't know, 3 months off work, for
Yeah.
example, and even 3 months of spending alone in meditation, doing nothing, will be of a tremendous healing capacity. That's a long time, you know. So maybe in 2 or 3 months you will be happy to come back to work, revigorated, and looking at some of your struggles with your coworkers as pity. Who knows? But you don't have to commit. You don't have to make plans and stick to them. You know, you can change plans at any moment.
Okay.
But I understand the fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me really nervous
Mhm.
and
Doing
like
nothing.
yeah, just especially yeah, I don't know. I just like it's hard to afford like anything nowadays.
Oh, you mean running out of money? Yeah.
Just in general, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's fucked up.
I have this, yeah, it's fucked up. I have this like idea for like, oh yeah, like eventually I'd like a family and a house, and it's just like it feels like the shit that I need to do to make that happen. Like conceptualizing doing that on top of just like dealing with this whole situation right now, it feels
Deal with this first, and then dealing with the rest will be easier. You know, it doesn't mean it will go exactly as you think, or you will achieve everything that you want to achieve. But but this seems like it's asking you now to deal with it. You see, I actually think that the fear, uh, if we're only talking about like taking, you don't have to take 3 months. You know, you can take 1 month of work, and if you're meditating, if you're doing some intense practice, we can also speak in one-on-one sessions, and we can uncover deeper and deeper emotional stuff. If you're doing intense practice, 1 or 2 months is a lot of time.
yeah.
It's a lot of time. So, so I suspect that even though the fear of running out of money and the economic situation might be present, and I'm not trying to invalidate it, it's a valid fear. It's a fucked up society, and it's getting worse and worse. And you know, uh, your parents got all the houses. You're not gonna get any. I'm kidding.
It's true.
But I suspect that the fear of what you will have to deal with emotionally when you just do nothing and things come up is the most important fear, because in my practice, in my experience, uh, we don't actually even feel fear that much of changing our circumstance. Like, for example, even if you don't get the house or the husband or the kids, the fear isn't of that. The fear is how it's going to make you feel, because maybe it's going to make you feel like a loser. You see, and so most of the fears that we have to deal with is the fear of inner experience, is the fear of inner emotional experience. So I suspect that the fear of what's going to happen uh, in meditation when you're doing nothing and seeing deeper into the sufferings of the ego is the fear that is predominant here, because I think that like uh, getting a few months of work will not jeopardize your career in such a way that it would not be quite easily recoverable, and it certainly will not destroy your professional network.
Yeah, the tech industry is in somewhat rough shape right now.
Yeah. Oh, are you in tech? Are you in tech? I forget. I'm sorry. Are you an
Yeah,
engineer?
that's um my current industry.
So imagine how ridiculous it will be if you're right now like all scared about losing your skills in your job, and it's like in 5 years your job is going to be completely automated by AI, and
I'm trying to work in the AI industry so that I can get ahead of that a little. But yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, okay. I think I just like kind of wanted sanity and reassurance and um yeah. It's this I mean it's all common sense, but it's still yeah, I'm not having fun. I'm not enjoying it. I'm really not having fun. It's like
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, it's
Crying helps.
yeah, it's I've been doing a lot of it, and it's like, am I just supposed to cry or should I
Yes,
change something? Because it's
you just cry.
yeah.
All inner conflict is resolved experientially. All inner conflict is resolved through like going into some tension, and most emotion is tension, and crying is a release of tension. And whether it's crying or anger or fear, you go there directly, you allow it, you welcome it, you approach it as a experiential reality. That's what resolves all conflict. That's how we get more and more clarity about what we really want to do, and that's the only way. I wish I had better news.
I know. Back to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Artem.
You're most welcome. It was great seeing you. And if you wish, we can practice together. You can schedule one and we can explore the fears and the tensions and the conflicts.
Cool. I've been thinking of signing up. I'll look into that.
It was good seeing you.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye. Love you.
Love you.
Maxim, hi.
Hi,
Hi.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. How are you doing?
Good.
Nice. Um, uh, so I've been looking at people, their interactions, and how I interact with them. And I have this, I don't know if it's a sensation or a feeling, or just my mind tries to explain what I understand, that I can't understand them and they can't understand me. And like no one can understand no one because everybody lives in their own head, in their own
Yes,
world.
that's very
And
true.
everyone says like, yeah, I get you, I understand you, I know what you're feeling, but no one does. Like we're just using words to trying to express which cannot be transmitted to another human being.
You're
And
right.
when that happens, there's this feeling, I would say that is loneliness, I guess, because no one will ever even come close to something that happens in my head, and I will never understand what happens in their head. And when that happens, it's like I have, I don't know how to explain it. It's like I have a black hole inside of me, and it's just sucking me up, uh, and it's very it's um,
Disturbing.
yes, it's very disturbing, and I feel that when I focus on it, like it's going to suck me up, and I'm going to die. And that's like I don't quite understand. Um, well, I don't understand nothing at the end. Just how are we supposed to communicate with other people if all we can see and hear is ourselves? Or I mean, our what happens inside of us.
Yes, you're right. Um, every one of us is completely alone in our experience. That's actually one of the realizations. That's why it feels lonely. Uh, but this loneliness is only loneliness of that entity, let's say, or that persona that didn't want to admit that it's true. So this loneliness is transmuted, it's transfigured into very deep aloneness. That's why enlightenment has been described as aloneness. Every one of us is completely alone in our experience. And all we can do is describe our experience to each other, hoping that they can relate to it in one way or another. Because language is only communication, it's only description. It does not relay the experience, you see. That's also why, I cannot transmit anyone's experience of enlightenment. I cannot transmit my experience of enlightenment to anyone else, and if they even feel something in my presence or feel something as a response to communication to me, that's still theirs. So I can only point. So this loneliness is actually very good. It is a gateway into adulthood, because also understanding that everyone lives in their own world and experiences their own things is actually maturity. That we cannot give anything to each other directly. We can only manipulate each other, which is what the society does. And so when you feel that, and you feel this void that is pulling you in, let it. And just close your eyes. And if it feels like dying, die. Nothing that is alive can die. Only the ego can die. You're not going to die. Your body's not going to die. It may feel like dying, but it's not. Just surrender to the fear. Just let it happen.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's just... I think I was trying to find a way around that.
Yeah, no.
Way around that.
No. But it pulls you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way around the black hole. It's going to happen.
No.
I guess it's my mind. It can't imagine what's on the other side, so it's so afraid of.
Of course, yes, and it tries to. Yes, but you can't imagine. Yes, just like you cannot imagine someone else's experience, you similarly cannot imagine your future experience. So imagining someone else's experience or imagining your future experience is both folly, because imagination is not reality. So you can't know. It's a journey into the unknown. You can't know. Stop wanting to know. Stop trying to know.
It's my biggest fear.
Yeah. Let go of wanting to know, wanting to control.
Yeah, I guess that's what I needed to hear. Thank you.
You're most welcome, my friend. Okay, let me bring Jeff on stage. Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. We met online once. I don't know if you remember me, but I think we discussed a little bit online as well.
Was that a part of the YouTube satsang or one-on-one?
It was part of, you were on a call with Dhammarato and
yes,
the Dhammarato crew.
Yes,
someone in the Dhammarato crew.
You're the Jeff that is a friend of Alex.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Hi, Alex. Yeah. I feel like I'm sort of in a play and there's two characters and I'm playing both characters. One is someone who is very calm, relaxed. The mind is extremely quiet. Everything is as it should be. And then the other is just unremitting fear. And I'm sort of fluctuating between these two characters. There doesn't seem to be, like, almost like my emotional states have become constricted to these two. And I've been doing a lot of so-called do-nothing meditation. Frank Yang speaks of that. So I've been, when the fear arises, which is very, very common, I see it in my body, and then I just kind of just let it be, sort of try to relax my body and do it again and again and again. And I have long sessions where there'll be the fear, it'll be there, and then it'll just resolve itself, and I go to being that other character that I describe. And then, so some days, I do the meditation. After even 10 minutes, I'm back to this other character, and then everything's fine while I meditate. And then when I go out of the meditative state, the fear slowly starts to build again. Like, I see a great deal of fear. There's a lot of that. Like, I did a lot of noting practice years ago, as per like Daniel Ingram. I don't know if you're familiar with the practice, in detail as to what he did, but I was really into that. And I actually had an opportunity to speak to Daniel Ingram, and he said, well, you've gone through this arising and passing away stage, and now you're in the fear stage of practice. But I feel that blissful, I was in this beautiful, blissful state for like almost a month, and I was convinced I had become enlightened. And then all of a sudden, wham, I got hit with this fear, and I feel like it's traumatized me, and I'm stuck now. And I'm stuck in this, just, the fear, either the fear or this very calm, everything's cool state. And there doesn't seem to be anything in between. So I don't know, like, how fucking long does this last? And that's probably part of the problem, is asking myself, how long does this fucking last? But, am I doing something wrong? Do I continue to do this? Do I have to fucking do this till I'm dead? I'm 61 years old. Like, what do I do?
Well, the good news is that, in my view, when or if you die, you're going to go through this fear anyway. So you literally have nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, death seems like the great release to me. I mean, if I found out tomorrow I have cancer,
because you're assuming that in death you won't have to go through this fear.
Well, when I'm dead, I won't be in
when
fear.
You're dead, but while you're dying.
Oh, I know, absolutely. But I've seen it before. Who cares?
Happening. You can even look at it right now. As my ego is dying. It's a part of the death process. You see, I mean, there's bodily death, but then there's the ego death.
Yeah,
and the ego kind of dies into fear. It's the only fear. I mean, the good news is that it's the only fear that you will ever experience. This fear is what needs your attention right now. So yes,
I give it so much attention, like hours a day of my attention, and I give it love, and I bring it, like, I talk to myself like when I'm as a child, because I know, to me, I mean, I guess the ultimate core of it is that you're just afraid of what's going to happen in the next moment. And I see that. The next moment, it's like, and I'm so conditioned to this next moment, because when I was little, I witnessed violence.
Yes.
As an infant, like, I'm told these stories. I don't remember a lot of this. There was some stuff that I do remember as I was older, and I saw things. But like, I saw, my mother sort of acting out, being violent to my siblings. And so I think, much of it is that. But ultimately, the core is, I'm always waiting for the next fucking bad thing to happen. because I think I've been hardwired to believe that's what's coming.
Yep. I agree. Yes.
Okay.
And does anything when you stay with the fear long enough, does it change into something?
Well, this is what really puzzles me. Pardon me?
What comes after fear?
The other character.
Oh, just the other character.
Mr. Everything's Cool.
Huh. That's probably why you called it a character, because it's probably also inauthentic. Because when it's really everything is cool, it's not a character at all.
Well, everything certainly feels cool. There's no...
How does the fear go away? I mean, does it sort of just kind of dissolves, or there is a moment which is more like, okay, we've had enough, everything's cool again?
I think it's a more of a case of complete acceptance of the present moment, and then it releases.
Has it been diminishing over the last, let's say, months? Or is it the same fluctuations, the kind of the same fear with the same intensity? Now everything's cool again. The same fear with the same, and everything's cool again. Because it looks like you're saying that you basically only fluctuate from fear to equanimity, and then from fear to equanimity, from fear to equanimity.
Yeah. But I would say that I've been doing a lot more of, what you suggest, a lot more of the do nothing practice. And over the last few months, I would say the fear when it's there is more intense, actually.
More intense. Okay, so it's intensifying. Okay, well, that's good, because at least there's some movement into some direction. How long do you do the do nothing meditation for?
It varies. I mean, a minimum of half an hour, sometimes 3 hours.
Is there a difference between half an hour and 3 hours? So when you do it for 3 hours, is it also just fear and equanimity and nothing else? Or does it intensify closer to the last hour?
It really depends on the day. Like some days, the mind seems a lot more clingy, a lot more like just, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And that keeps the fear going. And then other days, the mind is just more willing to let go.
And then on the days that the mind does let go,
yeah,
and you do like I'm only asking about long meditations. I'm interested in 30 minutes, but I'm interested in how like long meditation looks like, anywhere like from 2 to 3 hours. So on a day when the mind does let go, what does it look like? Do you experience like fear for the first 45 minutes, and then you're just in an equanimous state for another 2 hours and nothing happens at all?
Yeah, like I'll have days like are, good days. I'll have the fear. I meditate 45 minutes, 60 minutes. And then there's the release. And then the rest of the day is just like, just the mind's very, very quiet. The body's very relaxed. Pardon me?
You said the rest of the day.
Yeah, like I can go the whole day.
Meditation. So it's like if it's the 3-hour meditation, then the rest of the meditation, like the other 2 hours of meditation are just floating in nothingness?
Yeah, like it'll last a long period of time.
I see. But it's been intensifying, this fear, over the course of the last 2 months.
Yeah, I would say, when I first started to do nothing, it was a lot more intense. And now it's sort of like if I were to draw a curve, it would sort of be, it was up, 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 up. And now it's kind of like when it's there, it's at this generally higher level than it was prior.
Okay. Well, there's my sort of analysis of the situation would be the following. There's for as long as there's fear, there's also something else. It's not like it is true that the fear is the last thing to go away, but when the fear goes away, is the last thing to go away. There's just like remnants of fear, just very very slight remnants of fear. Generally speaking, fear protects more emotion. So that makes sense to me that it intensifies, because that also makes sense to me that there's fear. There's resistance to fear. So it makes sense to me that it intensifies. There's something beyond it. What doesn't really make much sense to me is that there's just fear and then equanimity, because if you pass through the fear, especially intense fear, like if there's just like small subtle remnants of fear, that yes, but by this state, you're like equanimous pretty much 24/7, and then just like subtle hints of fear come up. But if there's intense fear and you're going into the fear and it intensifies, and then instead of shifting into something, a more like personal insight, compassion, tears, anger, like some other experience which fear usually protects, you go back into the blank state, then my suspicion is that both kind of the character that is fearful and the character that is equanimous are artificial, contrived characters. So my recommendation, my suggestion would be to either keep doing what you're doing, so continue to meditate. I would advise you to meditate for longer than 30 hours. Actually, 30 minutes. I actually think that a 30-minute meditation for you is a waste of time, basically. So it's like if you meditate for 7 days a week, 30 minutes each day, it will be like 3.5 hours in total. One 3.5 hour meditation will do more for you than this 30-minute meditation. So I suggest meditating at least 1.5 hours to 2 hours, maybe less frequently if you're interested in time. So it's like maybe 3 to 4 times a week, but for 2 hours instead of 30 minutes each day. Now, if you can, like throughout life, as this fear comes up, it's a good idea to sort of do the immediate meditation, you see. So it's like if the fear comes up, then yes, it's a good idea to close your eyes, just give it attention. Don't try to hush it away at all. Just become curious about it. And if it dissolves without anything, then it's fine. If it leads you to something else, that's even more interesting. But don't have like any expectation. Just fear. Just invite the fear. If you're doing this sort of immediate meditation, then the moment you're sort of back into your ordinary kind of equanimous character, there's no reason to keep meditating. So it's like if you're going through life and the fear comes up and you sit down, close your eyes, stay with the fear, in 15 minutes it's gone, then get up and do something else. Instead of spending time here, better save it for a long, like 2-hour or 3-hour meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I would that I could recommend possibly is that you can try psychedelics. So you can try to meditate if you want to see through this, because there's definitely something through this to see. Otherwise, you would be complaining or asking me any questions. So if you wanna see through this, you can try starting with like a relatively low dose of LSD and magic mushrooms and see what happens. Most likely, there's going to be the same fear but more intense. But other than fear, there will be more stuff. There will probably be some activity of the mind. There will probably be some other emotional release. So I think that there is kind of it happens quite frequently. So there's a sort of a space in your consciousness, in your mind, where you feel more or less equanimous, but it's not yet like wholeness. It's not yet effortlessly maintained. Otherwise, the fear wouldn't come. So the fear is coming as a sort of a it wants to destroy this equanimous character also.
Yeah.
It wants
feels that way, yeah.
It wants to feel the other stuff that this equanimous character is hiding, and then it wants you to sink into real equanimity. And so paying attention to your emotional responses everywhere in life and everywhere, doing longish meditation, because sooner or later you will get tired of this equanimous character. Even if you do long meditation and you like you just rest in equanimity for 2 hours after the first hour, and you do this, continue to do this, sooner or later you will get tired of this too, and there will be a deepening. That's what the rising intensity of fear also indicates. So doing this, or kind of intensifying the experience with the help of some psychedelic medicine are the only 3 things that come to mind to me. You can also come to our May retreat, by the way, and see. This can also be emotionally moving experience. But basically, every experience that is emotionally moving for you is good. So every connection, intimacy, if you watch a movie and it makes you cry, kind of if you connect more intimately with other people, if you maybe talk about your past childhood, and if it moves you emotionally, it's good.
Okay.
The same thing is supposed to happen in meditation. If you give it long enough time, it will happen. There is nothing that psychedelics can do that meditation cannot. But psychedelics make it also more efficient, intense, and time effective. So if you're concerned about time, if you'd like to see more now while you're still alive, then you absolutely can try them.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, my friend. It was good talking to you.
Bye.
Alex, I'm very sorry, but I just don't have the time. I have to go. It's been almost 2 hours, and I just don't have the time. I'm sorry. Thomas, I saw your question, but I also don't have the time to answer it. So maybe you can submit it to the next satsang. Okay, thank you everyone that showed up. Thank you for your questions. I will see you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye. Love you all.